It appears that we're live. So just a quick test. And then we'll be on with the show and so forth. It appears that we're live. All right, so that's good enough. And chat. Don't do that. Somewhere around there is close enough. I think that'll be enough. Good enough. I do have the link to the forum page that's supposed to have the only correct math on the internet for the double slit experiment. But we'll save that for later, maybe. Times get desperate. Better subjects. Because it's just all convoluted mush. There's no way to decipher any of it. So, crap with an opinion. I mean, why do people even bother? what I'm supposed to take this seriously. Oh, a guy has a piece of crap as an icon and the name crap with an opinion. Yeah, right. Wow, you're a dumbass coming from a piece of crap. So obviously, anything a piece of crap would have to say, I would think the opposite is probably true. So I must be a smartass. Did you even listen to what he said in the video? I played the video, retard. Wow. So stupid. And also, did you use your phone to record your face, then use another camera to record your phone and the screen? Really? No, I didn't do that. It was actually a tablet, idiot. And frankly, it worked pretty well. Idiot. So fuck you. Oh, god damn. So, authorized exetor. He has a picture of a pharaoh, so it's nice try. So he must be a fatty, a Ken Wheeler fan, the fatty club. Oh, look, it's all phantasmagorical pastel colors. La 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 la. Oh, fuck. Fairy princesses. Goodbye. No argument person. Hey. So, here was it. Whoops. I didn't want that to happen. Whatever the hell that wasn't supposed to happen. The hell was that anyway? Those are some weird videos, Michael. Anyway, I gotta see how blind people take video. Anyway, make videos. Um, so this is the guy I want to read. This horrible, but whatever. High draft science. I suggest watching the 2013 MIT OpenCourseWare taught by Professor Alan Adams. So he's a string theory person, a person who doesn't think determinism is real because of the magical quanta. I have actually seen one of his lectures. Now, seen one of his lectures almost twice. Um, this one, the first one in the series. So I try to get to the second one because that'll probably be more important. But he uses this fake analogy to start the lecture. So he's basically explaining quantum mechanics by using metaphors for the actual experiment. So he has this experiment where he's saying electrons have hardness and they're black or white. So two things they have. They're either hard and soft or black and white, which is probably just some sort of metaphor for polarization or something else. And so he can't even start the, the conversation in an honest way by actually explaining what the experiment is, the black box that can detect which one of these things it is, and how we get paradoxical when we start going from one box to another box to another box to another box. And it's just based on this stupid premise that the boxes do nothing, at all. Don't change reality. So you can test all you want and you're not changing any realities. And it's just so sorry, it's stupid. It's just stupid to think that's the way the universe works. Anyway, you can find the entire semester worth of video lectures here on YouTube. Yes, I know. Well, they work better actually on the website because they're not in very good order on YouTube. Throughout your videos, you complain that these professors do not provide a logical connection. No, I complain that they can't get the story right. So you either, accurately quote me. They can't describe the simplest experiment in physics accurately. They have to draw it inaccurately, disproportional to the mean, in distorted ways, only showing half the story. That kind of crap. That's the accusation. Jesus Christ. Do not provide a logical connection between the cause, quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics isn't a cause, quite obviously, because it doesn't have a definition exactly. The magical random thing happens. The magical, I don't know where I am. Yes, I'm magically not anywhere until somebody decides to make me somewhere. Yes, that's not a cause. That's a silly story. All right. And the effect, interference patterns on the double slit experiment. Again, even you calling them interference patterns when all they are is on and off patterns. So again, you just can't be honest to what the facts are. The thing under dispute is whether it's caused by interference. And every time you people see on off, you just go interference, 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 interference. By the end of the semester, Professor Adam elucidates this causal relationship better than almost anyone else I've ever watched or read. La, 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 la. I bet not. Because he's a fairy princess himself. He hasn't got the truth. He's got a stupid notion in his head that he has to defend with this convoluted metaphors rather than actually talking about actual experiments. Because if he talked about the actual experiments, the obvious person might say, well, doesn't that experiment, fuck up the electron to measure it? Anyway, maybe you have already studied quantum phenomenon extensively. Nonetheless, I still suggest you watch these videos. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, I suggest you pull your head out of your ass to at least challenge your own perspective. Challenge it with what? What's the challenge going to be? A person who says we've proven everything over and over and over again and haven't proven anything even once. They can't even do the Eddington experiment over again. As a student who believes that quantum mechanics is the grandest theory ever constructed by humankind, I mean, what an amazing hunk of crap. I mean, it's not even a theory, it's a fable. If it was a constructed and you actually did explain causes, then you might be able to say, yes, it's pretty incredible that we figured out the causes. But you don't have causes. You have made up Huygens things you can't prove ever happen. An infinite number of little waves are created, little round waves. The flat waves create an infinite number of little round waves. La, 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 la. And you think that's the grandest accomplishment of humankind as an intellectual pursuit. Amazing rubbish. I have watched your videos because there is no greater joy in life than testing your own convictions against differing opinions. And you're not bothering with that test because the obvious answer to the obvious questions are, is the evidence weak? Yes. Are the conclusions jumping the evidence? Yes. Is it essentially now a dogmatic religion made up of assumptions they've turned into axioms? Light is a wave. We say so, even though Feynman didn't think so. We know quantum mechanics better than Feynman. Please give the videos a try. Yes, well, they're tedious and obnoxious to watch. But yes, I'm trying. And let us know what you think. Well, so far, I think it's shit. Fucking shit. Coleman Green, BS, Physics, Mathematics. 2020, I guess he graduated, I suppose. Not even 2020 yet, so that doesn't make sense. I guess he's going to graduate in 2020. I don't know what that means, 20. I don't know. 20 years old? I don't know. 20-inch dick? That's probably no chance of that, probably. Anyway, than Michael Falwell, who, generally speaking, I like his comments, but, he's not complimentary in some respects and blah, 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 blah. But this one went far afield again, I think. Hi, Gary. Been thinking about the perpetual motion engine. At our observable scale, any interaction or collision is kinetic. Well, I'd argue that at our scale, it's not, because everything gets distorted because heat gets generated and all kinds of shit, and you lose all capacity to follow the ball, the energy ball. I hope to get to that when I play some of the relativity shit. Any input energy is subject to losses. Yes, right. So the kinetic thing gets not so obvious due to friction, air resistance, and gravity. On a much smaller scale, the atomic, subatomic, any interaction is subject to little or no loss of energy inputted. Well, you should be able to say that more explicitly, that the conservation is a hard rule, and yeah, there just aren't any losses. It's all pretty direct. It's quanta, and it does a quanta interaction, a quantized interaction. There's no room for little bits to fly off. By your own theory, the electron doesn't hit another electron, right? Because both of them are radiating force, and same for protons. Yes, it's deflected. It's not a physical collision. It's deflected. It's a physical collision with a force. So it's physical in the sense that the force is physical. But yes, it's not physical in the sense the matter doesn't interact with the matter directly. It interacts with each other's forces. And the forces do not interact. They only interact with matter. So energy would be conserved to some degree. No, to all degrees. Energy conservation is just a pretty hard law. I think it's quite a good law. I don't see any problem with it. I don't have any objections to it. If atomic structure is due to magnetical opposing forces, atomic structure, yes. Tension, pulling and pushing in the sense of low and high pressure. Just like the Earth is a huge amount of high pressure. Right now, we're being accelerated 1G. Right now, the Earth is accelerating us 1G. That's why we're not moving. There's 1G pushing us down, and there's 1G pushing us back up. So the Earth has 1G of pressure. There's basically a flame underneath all of us right now of energy pushing us up. We're caught in tension. Gravity pushing down, ground pushing back up. Tension. Let's see. The atomic structure is due to magnetical. It does say magnetical. Opposing forces holding the material in geometric structure. Yes, the matter is never really colliding with each other at that scale. Right. Atoms don't hit atoms. Electrons bounce off of electrons. In the case of photons being absorbed, again, it seems to be different to what we observe at our kinetic collision scale. Well, I don't know what you mean. We can't observe it. So there's no point in, the best we can do is theorize about what happens. And I'm arguing that the photons are a force. They're the thing being admitted by, essentially, a form of photon is being admitted by the electron as force. So the photon is a force, not a material bit. Anyway, possibly this interaction would allow little or no energy loss within the system, driving the system perpetually. So that's just such a general statement. I mean, you still have to explain perpetual motion. You still have it's a real thing, this drag problem. You can't just pretend it's not a real thing. So the idea is that if you're moving into a force, you're magnifying the force. And the truth is the force exists, whether it's participating in gravity or not. it's still in the universe as a substance. And so when it's not moving, call that gravity. Outside of gravity, it's still there. And if you're moving, you're creating um, an imbalance between you and the momentum of the force. So therefore, you are dragging. And the point is there a mechanism capable of overwhelming the drag? And I'm arguing that yes, there is possible mechanisms that do create, like that's the flame that's under us right now, a flame you don't really see, but it's there. And matter atoms can possess by shape and form, they can possess that flame and therefore travel through the drag, create a compensating force for the implications of velocity, and overcome it, just as we can overcome gravity. But they can do it perpetually. We can't because we're not atoms. We're not protons and electrons. We don't have their function. We don't have anything in our big world that duplicates the function of an electron. So we don't have any example to use a geometric arrangement to demonstrate how possible it is to create a geometric arrangement that has more force in one direction than it does in another. All right. So Stephen Burrow posted a couple comments, mostly about the experiments we're collaborating on, sort of. He does all the work and I do all the complaining or something. It's, kind of an unfair relationship, but I'll work on it. So I did want to read this Scar Runner crap. This is just crap. I don't understand why people, they write comments to videos. These are long videos usually. I just don't see any point in making comments that are specific to some specific element of the video without quoting the context what you're talking about. So it's just a useless, can we use this to make a solar interferometer? I doubt the functionality of interferometers already. I've already pointed out how I don't think you can split the beam with, I don't think there's anything called a true 50-50 beam splitter that we know of in the universe. Creates two equal beams. So I think interferometers are already in a little bit of trouble. Not that they don't work at all, but I'm just saying they're not the magic device you think so. But I don't know how the context of this question. I have no way of answering it. Can we use this, whatever this is? I think that would settle the question. I don't know what the question was. It's just not a useful way to comment, in my opinion. Not at all. I'm going to reference one piece of an 2-hour video, and not give you any clue what I'm talking about. So whatever, delete it because it's just, I don't think it's a useful way to comment. I think there's 2 photons for the price of 1. So again, just rubbish. I don't know what that means. I don't have any clue what that could mean. I don't think so, be my response. Let's see, about I didn't think much of this comment either. About the light being affected by gravity thing. To rephrase your question, I don't think it needed to be rephrased. Why is light posited to be affected by gravity? My question is why is it necessary to the theory of relativity? That's the question. And apparently, I did find a video by the math guy. I lecture online, one I missed, the previous one to the one I played. And maybe I'll play that. It doesn't say much, but it sort of implies that the reason why Einstein needed light to be bent by gravity is so he could make a light clock that didn't work, that where the photon moved, sideways, something like that. But we'll see. Because obviously you can make if you made a real light clock, my argument would be that obviously the light wouldn't travel this longer path. because it's traveling it in straight line segments. And so it doesn't travel sideways. The light travels straight and the mirror moves. This is the thing that has the motion, is the mirror. The light doesn't travel sideways. It travels straight up at the normal speed of a photon. It doesn't travel a longer distance. The mirror moves to hit the photon. And that's the only way the light clock could work, is you'd have to move the mirror to hit the photon. That's it. There's, anyway, and so all of this extra distance thing would go away, and that makes relatively break down. So anyway, we use this. He says psychological. I'm not really interested. We can see matter, so what we can't see forces. Scientists should know all of this stuff, so it's okay. We can see light, therefore light is matter. Again, we don't see light. We really don't see it. We don't see it go this way or that way. Even when you see a laser beam, you're seeing a photon that's terminating inside your eyeball. You're not seeing the light. You're seeing its destruction. It's the opposite of seeing it. You're terminating it, or something along those lines. Well, again, it's just I would think the scientist types would be above these simplistic psychological traps. Why could I become convinced that light is a thinnest possible piece of matter? Question mark. It's not about how thin it is. It's about the fact that no matter how thin it is, you can't undo the inverse square law, because the inverse square law is being created by the gravitational body, not the photon. The photon's being affected by another body, and the other body doesn't change how much force it produces. Let's say the sun radiates nothing but light. It becomes less massive over time. I don't know what this had to do with anything. So that was... It does become less massive over time, unless it collects more matter than it shoots out energy, which is probably the truth. All right, there, done. That wasn't much of a doing. Does the magnet radiate away? So you were done, and then you added this extra bit, I suppose. I don't know. Does a magnet radiate away its magnetic properties? I've already brought up that point that, of course, it doesn't. Does an object waste away its gravity by exercising it? Obviously, the Earth and the Sun don't have to expend any energy to create the force effect. And physics should have an explanation for why that is. Either the energy is coming from the outside, or they have to come up with a magical energy source. It seems obvious the energy has to be coming from the outside. That's your only answer, right? The other answers are there's some sort of special energy that we haven't talked about or know about. The magical energy source. And that just doesn't... So you have your choice, magical energy source, or obviously there's a force from the exterior that the Earth and the Sun are mainly manipulating. They're not creating the energy. They're just manipulating the energy, changing its effect. Not very complicated. So this comment was another useless pile of crap. Einstein died of erotic. Erotic. I thought it was a carotid rupture aneurysm, a copper deficiency. First sign of copper deficiency is white hair. Well, that's just too interesting. Hey, Gary, gravity control was achieved in 1954 by research of Victor Plumberg, German scientist. How would you speculate he achieved this in 1940? I don't think he did achieve any such thing, so I think that's just crap. This first anti-gravity vehicle can only move vertically. You could start here. No, I don't think I'll play with that at all, so I think I'll just say, see ya, you're an idiot. Let's see, the theories of physics, which I like. I think I already read this, so some of the questions are stupid. Well, whatever, complimentary, won't bother with it. All right, so I think that's it for comments, so we can move on to other things. Let's see, does Ken really believe in ether? He believes, he doesn't care whether you call it counter space or ether or the lack of inertia. Well, maybe it's inertia. Lack of inertia is something, I don't know. He doesn't think inertia is the real world inertia. He thinks it's the 2,000-year-old word inertia. So, I mean, he just plays with words. Ancient aliens, flat earth theory. Yes, I don't think he's a flat earther. I'm not at all sure. He might believe in ancient aliens because he has a love affair with ancient things. What do you think about string theory? I think it sounds like baby talk. I mean, it's a little musical. The universe is a little musical organ, and little strings are vibrating, and la 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 la. It's just fucking gooey crap. Clearly, they're trying to come up with an energy source, right? So they're trying to explain the tension by saying that tension's being created from the inside by little vibrating strings that are creating all the energy. When the obvious answer, in my opinion, is no, the energy comes from the outside. That's where the pressure comes from. No strings necessary. So, yes, I think string theory is just, again, it's just you have a 50-50 choices, and they always, without ever missing, they always choose badly. You know, plus, minus, get it wrong. Push, pull, get it wrong. you know, outside, inside, and get it wrong. You know, it's always wrong. So, yeah. All right, so I guess I'll move on to some of my agenda. So what part to do first? Oh yeah, maybe I'll do the David Hill holster thing. Maybe. This video I gotta watch that. Yes, that's the one Steve guy sent me. Kind of interesting fellow. I want to subscribe to him. Amateur radio stuff, but it has all to do with all this 10 gigahertz thing, which is kind of interesting. Double slit experiment gratings. Double slit gratings. Yeah. Where the hell was it? Smarter every day. No, that couldn't be that. What did I do with the D-Hilster crap? I think it's here. But it had a time code on it. I believe I may have made a mistake someplace then. Yes, that's the MIT microwave interference. That ain't right. That's the volcano, so it can't be there. Probably had it here. Where else would I have put it? I might have put it in the text links. Sorry, it's logistics. There's always something, you know. Let's see, does this have a time code? Well, it has a time code, but it might not be the right link. Well, we'll see what we get. It's, a lot of things to keep track of.
Kicked out because he was absolutely disrespectful to our members.
Okay, so he says, "Why was I kicked out of the debate room or conversation room?" So I was never that in the room. In the room, I only gave what I got. If somebody dissed me, I dissed them back, that kind of thing. But I didn't do anything outrageous. So this is crap. I wasn't disrespectful to the members in any interactions between us personally. So that's just a pile of crap. Beyond calling the guy out and saying, you're claiming a conspiracy theory where the whole world is hiding these books by Steinmetz. Do you have any evidence that that's truth? Or Heaviside, or whoever it was.
Our founder. And
so as founder, all I did was say, "Who's John Chappelle? Who the fuck is this guy? Why is this guy's name on the organization? Why is he important? What's his brilliant contribution?" So you're being disrespectful by asking, "Who the fuck is this guy?" Yeah, right. So this has come from a guy, like I say, so he's been totally disrespectful to conventional science, deGrasse Tyson, all kinds of people he's dissed. He's mocked essentially in a video, music video he made, Hawking's disability. I mean, it was really kind of a gross thing to do. You know, you can say Hawkins was a garbage scientist, but you don't play around with his disability. That's just, that kind of humor is, you know, disrespectful at minimum. You know, made lots of cracks about Einstein. So he's clearly dissed their community. So he has no right to complain about being shut out because he's using the same standard. He's saying if you diss us, you can't interact with us. And he's doing exactly the same fucking thing. Fucking hypocrite.
And the history of our organization had nothing to do with.
I didn't diss their history at all. I don't even know their history. I clearly think the organization is mostly tinfoil hatters. Yes, predominantly full of cranks. Okay, people who are just replacing garbage with a new piece of garbage. All right, they don't have any great evidence for anything they're spouting. Nothing. They're just replacing what exists with another religion.
With his arguments at all, none. I can.
Yeah. So again, my arguments aren't the problem. Something else is the problem. I'm not allowed to exercise my free speech on my time. I can't have an opinion that says I don't like you guys or something. And if I have that opinion, that means we can't interact. It's just whiny bullshit, little girly stuff, pussy.
Show you that if you want. I won't do it because it's really degrading. But basically,
yeah, what's degrading is, like I said, how big a pussy you are. I mean, for all your bold talk, you're a pussy.
During my lecture on Saturday at Live, he was doing a parallel CMPS makeup. He said he wanted to do the deal, and he.
Yeah, I was doing a live room, and I went to your room to see what the hell was going on, and I realized it's a video. I even said it. I said I think I already saw this, so it was a repeat of something that wasn't exactly live. And yeah, you're just reading some critique of physics. It wasn't on physics. And so I said, well, this isn't even physics, so fuck it.
Said, oh, David's talking about some dead guys that don't matter. Talking about people that were, oh, he's.
Yes. Wow, that's an outrageous thing to say, right? Well, you can't have that opinion. Yeah, I can. I mean, frankly. You know, the dead are sort of irrelevant. They can't make arguments. So, you know, if the dead people don't have an advocate to talk for them, then yeah, they're sort of out of the game.
Reading something from some old guy that has nothing to do with physics.
Yeah, the subject of the commentary had nothing to do with any physics theory or principle. It was just a rag about how human beings have a problem getting this thing done or getting it right or all that bullshit. It wasn't on the subject of some science. It was on the subject of politics, essentially.
And and then he's talking about them and the Tin Hatters. That's what he said during Live. You can go.
Wow, what an outrageous thing. I have voiced my honest opinion. No, you can't do that on this planet. Do you think it's a dishonest opinion? Do you think I have some other opinion? I'm not allowed to have honest opinions and express them. That's all you're saying to me. I'm not allowed to have an honest opinion and express it in an honest way without any distortions or corruptions or any fakery or any fraud whatsoever. That's not allowed. Okay. Then you suck. That's my honest opinion. You suck, if that's your standard.
To Draft Science, go to CMPS. You will find areas there where he completely disrespects, and that's one thing we do not tolerate.
Yeah, whatever. You don't have to tolerate. I really don't give a shit. Like I already pointed out, there's only a well, Franklin. There's not much intelligence in the room, so yeah, it is a little bit of a you're just talking to a bunch of 9/11 truthers essentially. So but I do see value in having rooms and communication, so I'm all for that. And I've basically directed people to your channel and to that channel. I've done some promotion work for you in spite of I haven't been glowing like, oh yeah, these are the greatest channels ever. but I've certainly encouraged people to look at it. And you're pretty unfucking grateful from my perspective, you cunt. Jeez.
We have no problem with somebody coming in making arguments of any kind as long as they're logical.
Yes, that's exactly what I did while I was in the room. So again, this is all just bullshit. You're saying on my private time I'm not allowed to express my honest opinions. That's bullshit. I'm sorry. That's fascism, fuckhead.
We don't allow conspiracies. We don't allow UFOs. We don't.
You do allow conspiracies and UFOs and fucking religious kooks. You do allow every bit of that. And you just gave a guy a lifetime achievement award for being all three of those things.
Don't allow religious things. We don't allow political things. What we do is science. And so he had.
So and the guy, the letter he was reading from the German guy who didn't go, but he was reading his letter, was a pretty political statement. So again, it's just kind of funny, you know. Even on that score, you are political. You are, you know, all of these. You know, it is very conspiratorial. A lot of these theories about how science has been censored, or they're hiding the magic information, or they stole all of Tesla's documents. Those nutters are all in your group.
It had nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, the person, Franklin Hugh, who's in charge of it, gave a wrong impression along with how.
So now he's dissing Franklin for honestly saying, I don't like this. I'm uncomfortable with this. You know, he didn't do anything wrong in this room. He didn't do anything worse than Bill and Fred do every time I come in here. He wasn't any more of a snarky son of a bitch than these other assholes you like.
I know Paliseja. I love those guys dearly. They're my friends, but they did give everybody a bad impression. They were not kicked. He was not kicked out at all because of the way he's talking.
Yeah, he was. He was kicked out because you don't like his dissidence from your agenda, because he doesn't agree with your agenda, which is turn science into freaking kid science, dumb it all down, and you know, pretend any theory is a good theory.
In fact, one of the problems I think is that he came into a group that was sort of stuck. It wasn't going, you know, the same people were there. So he came in and he was stimulating conversation. They didn't want to lose that, but you can't have that at the cost of somebody who then immediately goes off and calls you all tin head, that all the people who.
Tin heads. Well, I didn't call you tin heads, but it's probably the same thing. Okay. Aluminum foil hat and tin head, probably close enough to the same uselessness. But yes, your agenda seems to be anything anti. It doesn't seem to be, let's get it right. Let's find the right answer. You're just saying, let's find any answer that's not their answer. You know. Glad I missed that dissing disabilities. Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, humor is humor, you know, and you can get away with a lot of stuff. But I mean, you really shouldn't be doing you know, they had like a guy in a wheelchair that was like unconscious, you know, drooling on himself, and you know, and then they're playing their little music, and he gets pushed through something, and he has some revelation. He gets out of the wheelchair, but some chick does a dance in front of him or something, and you know, it's just tacky as fuck. Tacky as, I'm just saying. I mean, you know, I just. You know, ALS is not funny, man. It just ain't funny.
It's founded our organization. Like, geez, who's this John Chappelle guy? I mean,
yeah. Well, why don't you explain someday? Why doesn't one of you people just say who he is? Because you're in an organization that has his name on it. I think if I'm going to join an organization and the guy's name on it, I want to know who the fucking guy is. I mean, do you have to put like, what if he was John Hitler? I mean, what, would you just join any group? You don't want to know something about the person who you've decided to place his name right smack on the top of the damn thing? And again, it's natural philosophy. I think he wasn't even about just physics. It's about some kind of idea that, you know, this whole notion of a natural philosophy is just idiotic anyway. There's nothing natural about being intelligent, frankly. in so many ways. Most of the universe doesn't run on systems that become ordered and efficient. It runs on a hell of a lot of inefficiency.
And that was completely uncalled for. So,
whatever that means, uncalled for. Okay, I'm just saying these standards are ridiculous. And if the world, obviously is behaving a lot like you in the sense that we don't have to acknowledge your existence because you're the wrong color or the wrong sex or the wrong this or the wrong that. You're just bigots.
So I actually made a little video of what he said. I put it on base.
Right. So I should make a little video of you ragging on Degrassi Tyson or some other scientist, and I'll put that, where you're ragging on the HCl, the Hadron Collider, because too many people signed the document and this and that. And blah, blah, blah. I'll do all your little raggy shit, and I'll send it off to conventional science and say, yes, you're right to ignore this fuckhead. Look how rude he is.
Camp, and then base camp is we're starting to use that. We pay for that. We're going to pay for that. It's a really good system. I had all the direct.
Yeah, it's whatever. It seems that $90 a month for crap, but whatever. It's your money. Well, it was your money.
First, who could, because we have a directorate. I think we have 7 people or 7 or 9 people. I can't remember. An odd number. And all we need is majority. And I put that down. I said,
right. So he doesn't even say what the vote was, which was, 1-0. Because no one else showed up for the voting. Yeah.
My opinion, this person shouldn't be part of our organization.
I didn't. I told you right to your face why I wouldn't be jumping to the opportunity to be part of your organization, because I was a little concerned that it's an organization that has no standards. Now, if I'm going to belong to an organization that has no standards, then all that nutty crap is going to rub off on me. So I'm just saying, I told you that right to your face. I think it's sort of important that you just don't let any theory and just say any theory is a good theory. No, that's just wasting people's time. Having 500,000 junk theories for me to, oh, look, we have all the papers we have published. Well, I'm supposed to read them all? I mean, please. I mean, the whole point is for the organization to take care of do some of this work for me. I shouldn't have to figure out if it's a piece of shit or not. You should be able to tell me whether it's a piece of shit.
Allowed to be, because it's completely disrespectful. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, I've been around this organization since 1996, 2 years.
Yeah, whatever. That's your business. And again, it's really not about the organization. It's about the fact that you're having a public physics room, and it seems to me that you're inviting essentially this interaction, and that you want your ideas to be tested, and you want this to take place. And apparently you don't want that to happen. Franklin does. You don't. Pretty much.
Into it. So it's been over 20 years. I've never seen anybody say those kinds of things about us. So.
I think that's just silly. No one's known about you for 20 years. So I guess that might be part of the reason. And apparently you don't, maybe you didn't get the memos, but I'm sure there's some people who said, that's guard junk science.
That's why. I hope that makes sense. Let's see, why did okay? This is fun, and I'm taking notes, Matt.
So anyway, it was kind of funny that Piro was the one who left the comment. Why did you kick draft science out? It's kind of funny. So I mean, these are people that are associated with me that would never even know you existed without me. Okay, so just I'm not saying I need any credit, or I don't even want to thank you. I'm just saying, you're just such a fuckhead for playing this game. Like I'm some sort of bad character. I've been very fair, in my opinion. So let's just point out, he bought fake subscribers. So he bought 2,000 subscribers, and he's still thumbing up his own videos, at a insane rate, 10 or 15 sock account pump ups per video. you know, kind of cheesy. And you know, sorry, but that's kind of uh, you know, you seem like the person with the dubious standards, not me. I'm playing the honest game. I don't upvote my videos. I don't do a damn thing to encourage anybody to subscribe. I don't do a damn thing to promote me in any fake way. All right. All right. So I should see if there's any new stuff. But I got to remember where I was on these relativity videos. I'm way behind, as you can see. So, you know, we post one like every day, and it's just I'm not, you know, I haven't been watching every day. I mean, the optics ones are kind of interesting, the reflections and stuff. So I want to watch some more of those. Let's just see if there's anything else here. Professor Lewin's sort of becoming unwatchable. He's sipping hot chocolate the other day. I had to turn the video off. I just said, fuck this hot chocolate. My wife makes the best hot chocolate, blah, 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 blah. Anyway. All right, so two more by this guy. No, I already did these. Good. Yeah, that was Q&A Friday. So science woke crap. Sorry, I think that's kind of crap too. I haven't seen that one. I don't know how this one got here again. I don't know. How's the video get there twice? Scheduled for. Oh, okay. That's next week's. It's an announcement for next week's video. Next Friday. All right. Anyway. So I'm sure these things are not worth anything. Fractal woman is just, you know, she just got caught up in this fractal crap, obviously. The universe is not a fractal. But whatever. You can, you know, people are just going to believe whatever they're going to believe. All right. So we're back to the I lecture online guy. Let's see if there's any comments. All right. Well, glad you missed that dissing disabilities. Yes. It's really stupid. You're funny looking. Yeah, well, I'm sure you're worse looking. You don't even have a head. You're a necktie, Ivan. God, what a. Jesus. Yeah. I'd like to challenge you to a wet panty contest. Let's see who can get a girl's panties wetter. And then I'll humiliate you. How would that be? You know, with my funny looks. Fucking idiot. Anyway. What an argument. I don't know. He's saying it's just totally unreferenced. So I just don't know what that means. Maybe he's just talking about Ivan. So, but he should have one of those at Ivan. What an argument. Yeah. Brilliant, you should say. Boy, that's just, oof, you win. Yeah, we all have to surrender. A funny looking argument. You know, and here we are talking about Einstein, and, you know, people say this kind of crap, and you're just like, jeez, I mean, man. I mean, Einstein was a lot more funny looking. Even this guy's a little bit funny looking. I mean, come on, purple shirt and shit.
For line, Einstein continued to expand in the idea that you could not tell the difference between being on the Earth and being in a spaceship accelerating at the acceleration due to gravity, g.
Right. So when you're accelerating at g, the catch is you're really accelerating at 2g in a sense, right? You're just adding another g to the g you're already going. So whether the Earth pushes you up or you have a big flame like a Harrier jet, right? A Harrier jet can float, you know, above the surface of the Earth because it pushes a whole bunch of force down to push it up. So it's a huge amount of energy it's expending to just do the 1g thing, which is compensate for gravity. So to move anywhere, it needs to add g's. It needs to add more g's. So he sort of acknowledges that in what he does here later, but it's just kind of funny that that's sort of where this conversation has to start, is that a spaceship moving 1g in Earth gravity isn't really stationary. I mean, it's obviously being pushed down and being pushed up, so it's obviously doing some of this shit. it's accelerating in both directions.
Being 9.8 meters per second squared. He said that any experiment done on the Earth would look exactly the same done on the spaceship. But he carried that concept.
Right, and this is the part where it's just totally unnecessary. So you don't need any equivalency principle because you could argue that anything, all forces originate with a force like gravity. They all originate with some force moving the speed of light. So anytime you get moved, you're really getting moved by something that ultimately started with one of these magnetism, gravity, or photons. It's one of those things that's the functional force, the real force. And those things are just being directed, like a laser beam can be directed. So you can just direct some of these forces, and some of them you can't point them and shoot them. At least we don't know how to do that yet.
Just one step further. He began to think of something that made him realize that light was affected by gravity. Now, we already knew, or at least back then, it was known, based on Newton's law of gravity, that there was a force between any two objects which was equal to...
Well, I know, but Einstein decided it's not a force. So isn't that part of the problem here? Is that, yes, it understood as a force, then you can understand that if light itself is a force, it's moving the same speed. Isn't that the logical deduction? They found out before Einstein through Maxwell that magnetism has the same speed as light. And they had already inferred that gravity has the same speed because the math works better when you use that speed. So why would you think light isn't a force? And so now you're arguing that forces get moved by forces. And now we're back to the problem of recognizing the superposition problem, where the forces don't interact. The force interacts with the matter, and the force interacts with the matter. Two charges don't actually interact with each other in the sense that the forces around them don't interact. The force has to get to the matter. Force doesn't interact with force. So there's absolutely no reason to think light bends.
To the constant g, that's the universal gravitational constant, times the product of the two masses of the two objects that are being attracted to one another due to gravity, divided by the distance between them squared. But the problem lay in this, that if...
Well, there's more than one problem with Newton's equation. The M1 and M2 is sort of a problem because it doesn't acknowledge that the force is a force created by both M1 and M2. They have independent forces. And yes, the net product will be an addition, but only something else can do the adding. So the real force is the sun's force is going to make the earth move, and the earth's force is going to make the sun move. But it doesn't work in any other way additively.
One of the objects, let's say M1 was equal to 0, then the force between the two objects can only be 0 by this equation. And
right, by the equation, by the assumption that the mass of a photon is 0. So essentially, Einstein is saying, no, it's got some kind of mass, and we'll make it, whatever, really, really small. It just doesn't matter. Because the mass doesn't matter concerning velocity. So it becomes irrelevant. So the Earth could be broken up into 10 million little pieces, and all those pieces have a much smaller mass, but it won't change how fast they're going or how much they're pulled by the sun. So they'll have exactly the same orbit. So we know that mass is irrelevant to the effect of gravity, and that velocity is really the key thing. So again, it sort of becomes irrelevant what the number of the mass is of the photon. So it can be infinitesimally small, and you're just acknowledging that it has it, and then you can apply the formula based on its velocity, but you don't apply the formula based on its mass, frankly. You just don't. Its mass is irrelevant. I mean, gravity demonstrates that. I mean, I know it's in the formula, but I just mean for generating a gravity, you need to have a mass. You don't need to have a mass to be affected by gravity is kind of the argument. What your mass is will not change how the gravity affects you. So making gravity requires you to have mass. Being affected by gravity just requires you to have some mass. It doesn't matter what your mass is.
Therefore, since light did not have a mass, light should not be affected by the force of gravity.
So again, it's a kind of a misrepresentation to use this formula and talk about effects of gravity. This formula is about what creates gravity, what creates the force. Mass creates the force. Mass doesn't involve anything, doesn't have anything to do with being affected by the force, essentially.
Nobody believed him, but he thought about it like this. He said, again, if whatever happens on the Earth and whatever happens on the spaceship accelerating at the acceleration due to gravity,
so again, this equivalency thing can be understood to be kind of stupid, just in the sense that we know from standing on the Earth that the acceleration up comes from our feet first. We're being pushed by the ground. But the gravity goes right through us. So we're directly pushed by a force, by the gravity. The pressure of the Earth doesn't give us the same kind of gravity push up. It pushes us up mechanically. So it's an indirect force. So it's a key difference because, that's where they're not parallel. They're not exactly the same. So when you're indirectly being injected with force, that is, some material thing pushes on your matter, that's a little bit different than when an actual force comes into you and pushes each one of your little bits exactly at the same time with its force. So, I mean, gravity's working, well, it's not exactly the same time, it's the speed of light, but clearly it's directly affecting each one of your little tiny atoms is being affected by the gravity.
If there's no difference between the experimentation that can be done on the two locations, therefore, whatever happens on the spaceship must also happen on the Earth.
Right. So there's no therefore here. There's absolutely no need to assume any equivalence beyond the fact of acknowledging that when you're being pushed, it's always going to feel like you're getting pushed. It doesn't matter what's pushing you. So whether a crocodile pushes you or a hippopotamus pushes you or a platypus pushes you, they're all just pushes. And that's how most acceleration happens, is something physical pushes you. All right. So, and very few of the events are ones where this gravity force or some other energy goes through you. So those are different ways of getting pushed, but clearly getting pushed by gravity is very different than getting pushed by the physical Earth pushing you.
Things cannot be different. And so he thought of this. He said, what if you have a spaceship that's accelerating at the acceleration due to gravity, and you throw a super ball now? Of course, back then they didn't have super balls, but let's just...
Yeah, you're wasting a lot of time in your 4-minute video with, So let's throw a piece of matter. Now we know matter isn't anything like a photon in the sense that matter absorbs velocities in different directions, accelerations in different directions, and comes up with a net product. And that will be its trajectory, and its trajectory will always be a sum, not an exact sum, but a combination of the two. It'll always be higher than either one of the vectors you're combining. The hypotenuse is always going to be longer.
Take a super ball because we're familiar with it.
And we can't change the speed of light, so therefore light can't do that. Light can't do this combine two motion things where the super ball can.
Those are those balls that bounce back really easily when you throw them against a wall. Let's say you have two vertical walls in your spaceship. Your spaceship is accelerating at G. You throw a super ball.
So if it's accelerating at just G, right, that just gets it neutral to gravity. So all it's doing is replacing the push of the ground. So 1G technically is you could just be 1g, 1 foot off the ground, and you're just standing there. So you're standing still again if you're still in gravity. And if you make a hole in your spaceship and throw a super ball through it, well, let's throw a photon through it. Why play with super balls? They're matter. It's not the same thing. You have every expectation that the super ball will bounce off if it's a mirror, it'll bounce off and go right back out the hole again because the ship isn't moving. It's just the way it is. It's not moving. Now, if you're going 1g above the gravity, then you'd argue that the ship is moving, and the photon, if the ship is wide enough, and you're going fast enough, it would bounce off the mirror, and by the time it gets back, the hole will have moved, and the photon will keep bouncing inside the ship. Now, that could happen if you're accelerating more g's than just the 1g to get off the ground. And but clearly we know that it would have to be a very wide spaceship because photons move very fast. So, it becomes kind of silly to talk about 1g and throwing anything because it's not enough motion to benefit from the speed of the photon. So that's why he's using a material object. But again, material objects are bad examples because they not only slow down in the atmosphere, they also are being pulled by the gravity. So it's just another assumption that just like a super ball, that's what a photon does. It gets pulled down. So this argument would be if I could make a flat Earth of the same gravitational effect and make it very, very long, you people actually believe that all the photons would crash into the Earth, that eventually get absorbed by the gravity and pushed into the Earth. Yeah, I think you're way wrong.
Straight across. Now, because of the acceleration, it's going to look like, just like you use on the Earth, the ball will begin to drop, and the ball will take a path that kind of looks like this. It'll go across the wall, then it's going to go down and down and down more.
Right. So, but none of that's really happening. It's not going down and down and down and down. And more importantly, it's not traveling a longer distance. So it will reach the other side at the speed of the super ball. It won't take this longer path and take a longer time. So it's really, the ball is just going back and forth, and obviously the ship is moving. The ship is the thing moving. So this is almost like the two-slit experiment. They keep drawing and illustrating things as if the photon has the power, when it's the ship, the surfaces that have the power. They're the thing changing the experiment, not the photon.
And eventually hit the ground. And that's due to the acceleration of the spaceship. So let's say we have a similar situation. We have a spaceship that's accelerating, A equals to G.
All right, so he said A equals 2G. He didn't write 2, but he said it, right? You heard it. He said 2G. I mean, I'll play it again but that's what he said. He said 2G. So he's acknowledging that one of the G's just gets you off the surface of the Earth, and you need 2 G's to actually have motion.
Have a similar situation. We have a spaceship that's accelerating, A equals to G, but instead of having 2 vertical walls, you now have 2 vertical mirrors opposed to one another. And let's say we have a tiny little window, and we shine a beam of light into the window. The beam of light will, of course, go straight across, bounce out the mirror, start going back in the other direction. But since the spaceship is accelerating upward, by the time the beam of light gets to the other side, since the window is very tiny, the beam of light will strike the mirror just below the hole, not go back out the window.
Right. So we know they'd have to go a lot faster than 2G for that to actually work, or the hole would have to be infinitesimally small, because the speed's not going to be nearly enough to overcome the speed of light, which is fantastically huge compared to the speed of the rocket. So there's no way it would miss the hole. It would go right back out the hole. So this is really a poor analogy. Or it's not even an analogy. This is a poor description of reality.
And then the beam will go back this way and back this way. And as the spaceship's accelerating and moving faster and faster, faster, the distance every time the beam comes back across will be a little bit greater, and the beam of light will begin to do something like this. just the same way.
All right, now the velocity has to be increasing for the distance of those angles to keep increasing. So those angles won't increase unless the light gets slower or the speed of the ship, the overall velocity, gets higher. So yes, if at 2g, the velocity keeps increasing. And so, yes, the line will get longer and longer. But again, it never even happens that way. The photon never travels those lines. It's just a distortion. The ship is moving, not the photon. The photon isn't going down. The ship is going up. And it's just such a deceptive way to draw it. I mean, here's the ship moving 2g that's completely stationary in the drawing. And look, I want to draw the photon. And it's just wrong because it doesn't do that. The photon goes in straight lines back and forth, and that's all it does. It keeps going straight back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The only thing that happens is the ship moves, the walls move. The photon just does a straight line back and forth.
As the little super ball will do. Of course, since the light moves a lot faster than the ball, it will go back and forth many, many more times, but eventually it will do the same thing as a ball and go back to the bottom.
No, it won't. But obviously the ship will keep moving, and if there's a bottom to the ship, yes, it'll eventually hit the photon. But it won't happen this way. The photon won't do the moving down. The photon just keep going straight across the same part of the chalkboard there, and the ship will leave the building. It's just such a wrong way to illustrate this. My opinion, it's just very deceptive. All right, so what do we got now? There's more idiots. Let's see. All right, so let's see, at draft. Ozzy Brilliant. I don't know what that is. You probably wouldn't know a good argument if it bit you in the ass. It's such a vague comment. Vague. Let's see where it started. All right, Daft Science. We have your agents. Means. Let's see. What is pain? What is suffering? When Denny's going to get a drive-through. Okay, so this is all useless drivel. Okay, so it's the same. It's a cowboy, no doubt. Drunk again. Probably just finished psycho killing some little 12-year-old. And so he's in his depressed period. You know, you could use a good interior decorator. Yeah, you could use a good bullet in the head. Piece of shit. You probably wouldn't know a good argument if it bit you in the ass. Let's see. Appreciate that. The screen didn't realize. Wait a minute, let's just get rid of them. Useless crap. God damn. People suck. I keep saying it. They show up to keep proving it. So thank you, assholes, for showing up to prove my argument. Anyway. Let's see. That was sarcasm if you didn't realize. Well, I'm sure you realized. What don't you do these videos? What don't you do these videos on your main channel? Would get so much more views. Yeah, they all whine and complain. Okay, all the little anti-natalist minions think I'm wasting my time doing physics, so they just complain. So that's why I had to make a separate channel. I'm gonna let it stand. But, so that's the obvious answer. So anyway, it's not about views anyway. It's about capturing some sort of viewer who has the mental faculties and capacity to answer a few questions. Like, that's all. I mean, really. All right, so do I need to go any further with this thing? So the next video I already played the last time. And the one after that, he does say some stuff that I found irritating, but I think it was just doing like twin paradoxes and shit like that. So it's probably not worth messing with. I think we already got the point. They need the photons to be moved by forces. I don't know. See, in anywhere in here, was there any recognition of any reason why you would need photons to be moved by gravity? Because here he's moving the ship at 2G. Here it's 1G. Clearly a difference. So that already accounts for the force difference. 2G is, there's no gravity involved. There's just accounting for the net force that this rocket would be traveling. The 1G rocket would be traveling essentially at 2G because it's overcoming gravity. So it's nullified the gravitational force and has 1G extra, which is the same as 2Gs in free space, technically. But why does it mean something? I mean, it's still an unproven thought experiment. I just don't see why does Einstein need photons to be bent by gravity? Why is it important to relativity? I don't have any intuitive answer to the question. I don't really see any connection why you need to play with the gravity effects on a force to make relativity, which is a silly time dilation notion, relevant. Yeah, so I don't get that. All right, so I guess that's it for comments. And so what else do I want to do? Not really enthusiastic. I mean, I really don't want to do the fucking stupid. What the hell is this one? Oh yeah, I gotta finish that one of these days. So this is the stupid two-slit perfect math that the whiner says is the only math, the greatest mathematics on the internet. And no, it just isn't, in my opinion, a great explanation of anything. So it says, when dealing with the doubles, this is a question from some whatever person in the crowd. When dealing with the double slit interference or interference of waves from numerous slits, the equation in lambda, or whatever it is, the wavelength, equals d sine theta, so distance times sine theta. The thickness, width of the slit, or the thickness of the lines. And as I pointed out, the only way that variable is consistent, very good point I made here, The reason why the two formulas can use a different thing as the same variable is because if you reword what the variable is, it makes sense. So the real point is the d value is either the opening of the slit, opening, or the thickness of the impediment in the double slit. And as you can sort of understand, is those two values are really just the distance between the surfaces. So if you understand it as being the distance between surfaces, you can understand why the same variable is being used to designate two fundamentally different things, right? The thickness of an impediment or the width of a slit. So, it's kind of an observation I didn't realize until the last video I made. I mean, I just didn't see how obvious. I mean, I've been advocating for paying attention to surfaces, and I didn't realize how obvious that their own mathematics is essentially doing that for me. It's saying right out loud, this is about surfaces, not about slit openings. All right. However, I do not understand why, for calculating the angle of maxima and minima, it is okay to consider the path difference of waves from each slit, where only one wave from each slit is considered, except in the single slit where there's obviously two waves. Surely there are numerous waves from each slit. Yes, and when they do the multi-slit, they're essentially acknowledging those extra waves. What part of the formula? I guess in the end part. I don't know where they're, well, maybe he's right. I don't know where they're acknowledging that. Anyway, following Huygens' principle, yeah, we don't have to acknowledge it because the width of the impediment is essentially telling you where the photons are going to go, and it doesn't, obviously, the more lines you have in a given volume of space, the smaller the lines have to become. So the size, the thickness of the line is proportional to how many slits are going to be in the beam. So that's essentially the answer to the question. Is the slit width is proportional, the line width is proportional to the number of lines that will fit in a certain amount of space. So the space is staying consistent and you're putting more lines in it, it means each line is thinner. So that's how the width of the lines is essentially dictating the number of lines. The two are proportional. All right. That would have been the right answer to this question. Surely there are numerous waves from each slit, following Huygens' principle that each wave forms a wave front is a source of a secondary wavelet. More importantly, it's the source of a round wavelet, where the wave was flat coming in, and now it has an infinite number of little wavelets. That's their theory. Therefore, surely there is an interference of infinite waves from each slit. Infinite waves. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the whole idea of the infinite waves is kind of silly. All right, therefore, surely it is unfair to assume that if one wave interferes at a certain way with another wave from another slit, then all the waves from each slit will therefore be the same way. Well, as I pointed out, the real key is that as you increase the number of slits, so to speak, you've automatically changed the thickness of the impediments, which essentially is the variable for the slit width. All right, so the guy says, actually, you're completely right. Most treatments of the double slit have some kind of simplification. All right, so that's legitimate without them calling it one. So that should be something said, they ought to change that. Okay, but it doesn't say that. The usual idea is that we approximate each slit in the double slit to be a point source, except when you get to the single slit, then you have 2 point sources. So again, it's just a contrivance. So what you're really analyzing is the case of 2 coherent point sources, when there should be 4 if you apply the rules that you applied in the single slit. So if you apply the same rules, there's not 2 point sources, there should be 4 point sources. This approximation can be justified by the assumption that your slits are really tiny compared to the distance between them and the wavelengths, which doesn't make any sense at all, but okay. So now he's really talking about there being multiple slits, and the little lines on a diffraction gradient are much smaller than the wavelength of light, but they're not much smaller. 1/10 at the smallest, maybe. They're you can fit multiple wavelengths, but it's let's see how to say it. Yeah, so much is a variable word here. They're not really much. All right, with each slit is tiny, there is less amount of wavelets, less amount of infinite. So that doesn't even make any sense, right? with each with each slit is tiny. When each slit is tiny, there is less amount of wavelets, right? Anyway, coming out. There are infinitely many, but hopefully my point still makes sense. So he says there are infinite many, but his point makes sense that somehow there's less infinite, only half of an infinite number. And that's supposed to make sense. That's improving the physics. He's giving me the better explanation. And the better explanation is just accept that we have half of an infinity. Oh, okay. And if there are less amount of wavelets coming out, there are less of them to be out of phase. So that could possibly make sense to somebody, not to me. All right. When you make your opening smaller and smaller, the two wavelets, so now we're back to 2 again. So there's 2 openings and 2 waves. There's 3 openings, there's 3 waves. Or not. I don't think they've ever showed the water experiment with 3 openings. I should look and see if I can find that. Anyway, when you make your opening smaller and smaller, the 2 wavelets most out of phase are closer and closer, and they are more and more in phase. So when you make your opening smaller and smaller, the 2 wavelets most out of phase, so there's only 2 waves, right? All right, anyway. But anyway, saying the 2 that are the most out of phase are closer and closer, and they are more and more in phase. So they're out of phase, but they're now more in phase. This isn't readable, is it? All right, indeed, in the case of the single slit, when you make the slit opening smaller and smaller, the middle bar becomes wider. All the bars become wider. At some point, it becomes so wide that you might as rather approximate the slit as a point source. So this just totally ignores the reality, right? It's just basically saying, I'll pretend there is no interference. So once I make the slit small enough, I'll just say there's no interference because the central maxima becomes the entire pattern. And therefore, I don't have to explain 2 waves because now I can't see the interference, right? And that's all, you can't see it. It's still there, you just can't see it. Okay, when you have a very narrow opening, it's very dim, and the width of the pattern is now very wide. So again, does that make any sense? At some point, it becomes so wide that you might as rather approximate the slit as a point source. What he's really saying is as a single point source, where quite obviously, to get the interference pattern, it has to be approximated as a double point source. There has to be something to be interfering with something. There can't be any interference from a single point source. So again, they're just a total evasion. All right, of course, you can actually do the full treatment of both the single slit and the double slit in detail, assuming far field approximations, which doesn't sound too good. In fact, you can get the full-blown function, except we've approximated it, that describes the pattern. I don't know, you can, says this guy. All right. The derivation gets messy. That doesn't sound good either. That sounds, this is the real thing, but it's messy and full of approximations. That doesn't sound too good. But the idea is that you have infinitely many wave fronts coming out, which just doesn't, I mean, to any physicist, that should just sound like a non-starter. Oh, no, that just doesn't work for me. Now, even as a pragmatic person, though, you can understand that, like, even if we accepted there was an infinite number, you could say it doesn't matter because it's just going to change the amount of resolution. And we'll never be able to see with enough resolution that we should bother with the infinite thing. So we should just make 10. So if we put 10 little waves, that should be good enough to approximate an infinite number. It should give us the same answer. But the question is there 10 or is there 9? Is the middle wave in the middle, or is the middle wave where two waves intersect? So when you do this infinite thing, you're sort of in trouble because you do have to pick whether infinity is an odd number or an even number, because it's going to matter to where that middle is, whether the middle is no wave or peak wave. You know, but they won't, you know, none of that matters to this crap. Anyway, but the idea is that you have an infinite many wavefronts coming out, and you want to add up the effect of each wavefront, each of which is infinitesimally small. Well, obviously, if there's an infinite number of them, yes, they're going to be pretty fucking small, because that an infinite number in a tiny space, that's really bad. Infinite number in this big wouldn't be so bad, but infinite number in here, oh, come on, I'm really in trouble. This is an insanely insipid conversation, in my opinion. For somebody to tell me this is reality, yeah, this guy's got the truth. It turns out this will require an integral to sum them up. Well, I imagine it will require some kind of, you know, something has to get fucked. Much the same way people speak of integrals adding up infinitesimal area. So in a sense, it'll require an approximation. It'll require some assumptions. It'll require you to basically say, let's just imagine there's 10 little waves. All right, when you do this, the intensity of the wave at the screen is, so he has a new formula, which I assume is I something. I don't know what that is. It's a theta inside of a bracket equals I prime, I guess. When it's a 0, sometimes that means I prime. I don't know what that means either. But anyway, so we got I equals I starting with, okay, sine squared. I don't know, why is it squared, right? It says squared, right? I mean, that's, why is it sine squared of an, you know, I don't understand how you have sine squared times, okay, pi a sine theta divided by lambda. So divided by the wavelength, you're dividing pi, which is the radius, assuming, of the little microwave, you know, times a, which is which variable? Usually the a sometimes is the width of the slit. I mean, the width of the impediment. So that might be a. And then times sine theta. Yes, because it's usually d sine theta. So he's added pi and divided by the wavelength. So he's added a pi and a sine squared. I don't know. And then he's dividing it by another pile of squared crap. Right, the double slit pattern, the slit with A. Okay, see, so we got it right. The double slit pattern, slit with A, distance between slits D. But there's no D in the equation. So he just gave us this equation. So I guess he's saying the single slit has a completely different equation than the double slit. Okay, turns out to have a surprisingly similar function, and the pattern is approximately given by. So now we have A and D. So he has D, so he adds this cosine squared thing, and then the pi times D. So the slit width is now multiplied times the product of the other equation. So you get the product of this other equation from the single slit, and you merely multiply it by pi times D sine theta divided by the wavelength. And you take the cosine of that and you multiply it by the single slit pattern, and somehow that gives you the double slit pattern. I doubt it. So whatever this equation is, I doubt it gives you the right answer. When we take a, whatever this is, greater the wavelength, we have pi a sine theta divided by the wavelength equals 0. That's if the wavelength is larger than A, which is the width of the slit. yeah, well, even in so they're really he's really dealing with diffraction gradients here. He's not really dealing with the distinction between the single slit and the double slit. But anyway, I don't want to get into this because I don't know what a sine squared is. I don't know what the fuck that even means. I mean, the squared should be after the thing getting signed. You should do your sine something squared. But I don't know why you square it. The sine. How do you square a sine? This doesn't make any sense. All right. So anyway, but it's a whole page full of this mathematical gibberish. His drawing is exactly the same drawing of the traditional experiment. So again, none of this means anything. In the single slit pattern, why are we assuming the existence of these two lines? And they're usually at a distance that's half d. So the two that are getting compared is usually this end one and this middle one, and then the middle one and this end one. And those are the two, essentially the two waves. But the distance being compared is not the distance of the width of the slit, it's half the width of the single slit is the ones used for the Huygens purpose. But this is just the traditional bullshit. I mean, there's nothing new in this. This is what you do when you have the double slit. See, the D is in this. So this is obviously the double slit, because he doesn't have the D variable in the single slit math. And so obviously the two slits are creating two waves. So there's no Huygens happening inside of this single slit. There's just one wave that's going to interfere with another wave. Given a point on the screen ahead, what is the straight path? Well, it's obviously it's not they're using 2 point sources coming out of this single slit, which in the double slit can't happen. So this isn't even right, because you have to do the math across the two slits. You have to do it across the, oh, this is the D is the impediment distance. So sorry, right? A is the width of the slit. D is the width of the impediment. So here's the double slit without the slits drawn. So he doesn't have the slits in here. And he's just doing the central impediment and then doing the math for basically, it's essentially doing this two waves coming off of these two surfaces, just creating two waves. Yeah, that's all there is. So there's all this math, derive. Look at this, another simplistic drawing, doesn't say a damn thing. So this doesn't explain how in a single slit Huygens creates one wave, and in a double slit somehow you create two waves. This certainly doesn't explain it. So there's no explanation in any of this mush. And the end result is this equation, which doesn't look much better than the one he started with. So all this deriving to do 4a squared, capital A, I don't know what the capital A is, sine squared again, the same crap, divided by the same crap squared, cosine. It looks like the same fucking equation. So he did all this deriving just to get rid of, the pi's are still in here. So he just did it to get rid of it, to create this 4a squared instead of the I prime. And then that's all that changed. So all the deriving to do that, to do almost nothing to the equation. And how does this prove this works? Oh, it doesn't. So, whatever. I just don't think it's much of an argument to tell me this is the only place in the internet where they do the math correctly. They don't do it correctly at MIT or Yale or Stanford. They do it somehow correctly on a forum page. It sounds like crap. All right, where were we? Okay. Let's see. What you don't do. We already did that. Different channels for different subjects. I want the cowboy dead. Well, I think everybody would be happy. But it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen, right? Unless we're just, by stupid, dumb luck, he finally gets arrested and thrown in jail for the rest of his life. Although some say I somehow lost my sanity. Whatever. Gary is sine squared. Gary, it's sine squared to avoid ambiguity, i.e., is the sine, I don't know what this even means, or sine x. Putting the 2 directly after the sine makes it clear it's the latter, that you're squaring the total. Well, I still don't think that would be hard to recognize by just putting brackets around it and then putting the square outside the brackets. So it doesn't, I thought that's what brackets were for, is to bracket things that get squared. But anyway, these meanings are taught in high school. Well, wherever they're taught, fine. Yeah, I went to high school 45 years ago. Do you remember everything you were taught in high school? Fuck you, cunt. Frankly, when I was in high school, that's not how they did. Actually, I took trigonometry, and it was pretty explicit that that's what brackets are for. You use round brackets, and then you have to bracket something else. Then you use curly brackets, and you have to bracket something else, bracket it with double lines. But yeah, you bracket things. I just never saw a sine squared sitting there in front of sine squared. What the fuck is that shit? I don't know how common that notation is. I'm just saying, I think it's lazy. I mean, what would the ambiguity be? You know, there's no real ambiguity. If you have sine bracket substance bracket squared, I don't see how anybody could not know that they're supposed to take the sine and to get the answer to the bracketed part, take the sine of that answer and square it. You're right. Brackets work to make things clear. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying. I'm not of the Twitter age. Okay. Yes, the new world likes to do a lot of shit that I wouldn't do. You know, everything's an acronym and everything is a half sentence and everything's a half word, and that's fine. I'm just saying, it's not the world I lived in. So anyway, I don't know what to, like I said, I just don't know if there's any point in, I've read through it and I just can't, like I said, all of his comments are just as the same as before. I don't know what he's saying. Here's Huygens. Huygens' principle deals with infinitely many wave fronts. Well, no, what it really deals with is rounding a flat wave. So technically, without the rounding of the wave, and that is this idea that the energy is taking longer paths, there's no function to Huygens. This means we are meant to send n to infinity. The above sum then transforms into, so yeah, whatever. I mean, I just don't think there's any logical reason to play with the infinity when the infinity is only granular. It's just giving you a bit more resolution. So you could just approximate the infinity to any whole number and you just don't have to bother with the integral because you just need to average it. All you need is an approximation. You don't need to attempt to gain any more information than the approximation is more than enough. But anyway, it just seems illogical to me. Huygens seems illogical. The use of it by physicists seems illogical. Why they would find that acceptable we're going to accept the notion that our cause for the effect is based on creating an infinite number of something within a confined space. And I would just think most physicists would say, can't we do better than that? Because that seems like a pretty illogical premise. I mean, we already seem like we are hitting the non-starter button. Shouldn't that be a non-starter? you know, an infinite number of things in a confined space. I mean, we're already saying fuck physics. Physics is stupid. So anyway, I really hate QM. Yeah, I don't hate QM in the sense of quantum electrodynamics. I love the idea of recognizing the interaction between forces and electrons. That's really, because that's everything. That's what's making everything happen is force and electrons. That's the big game. And but this idiotic Heisenberg and this fucking Huygens shit and this fucking many worlds and Copenhagen and photon radar and entanglement. That is just such rubbish. Benjamin, this guy once taught that you could never throw a baseball out a window because the train window would move. So, I mean, it's not the argument. The argument is that photons aren't baseballs. That photons can't have two momentums. They can't go 50 miles an hour back and forth across the bus and 60 miles an hour forward. They can't combine those two things into a vector. That photons aren't matter. That's the argument. Liar. It's just a cowboy, so I should just automatically delete it, but whatever. I mean, I just have this persistent need to keep lying about what I'm saying. It just shows how desperate they are. I've made it clear about all the arguments I make about the difference between matter's motion and forces motions. Forces can't combine, they can't add, they can't do this superposition thing. Sorry, kind of hot here. Just keeps raining now. So it's rained all week. Oh, it's so humid and it's just, yeah, it's gonna suck. It's already now. I mean, we already had enough rain for 2 days, and now it's gonna just keep raining. It's just gonna get muddy and crappy. Yeah, it's depressing. Got stupid little white flies attacking my plants. So annoying. Pests. Yeah. How many error codes today? What does that mean? How many error codes today? Oh, this thing. Yeah, no. Well, I worked on it today, and so I filed down the contacts on my tank, and I took the top off of this thing and adjusted the spring on the inside a little bit and fiddled with it. So it's actually working. All right, and it stopped working for 20 minutes, and I had to fiddle with it again. But it's actually working so far. So that's a good sign that at least I know, if I file things down, it might keep working. But yeah, it was flashing like today. What it was doing was it would say, ohms too high. And then I'd screw it in a little more and say ohms too low. Then I'd screw it out, say ohms too high, and say ohms too low. I mean, it's just retarded, It just didn't make any sense. Too much ohms, too little ohms. Which one is it? Can you make up your mind, please? But it works fine with this tank. So this is the annoying thing. This is a tank that comes with it. But it has this wide opening, and it's like you're sucking the juice. It doesn't. I hate it. And so I'm going to try it with really diluted nicotine. See, I mean, the new nicotine I'm using is 100 milligrams. It's really strong. And so this works really good on, like, I have it on 7 watts. I mean, it goes to 200 watts. I have it on 7. And this is just right. On that thing, you can only really fire it up at 20 watts. And it just it splatters a bunch of juice into your mouth, and nicotine kind of makes you sick if you swallow it. So it just sucks. But maybe I can figure out how to get that thing to smoke better, and then I won't have to worry about this problem. But it's nice the way it is now. I mean, it's really working good. I got good. I don't need a big. I'm not trying to make clouds. It's just not about clouds. It's about getting nicotine into your brain. That's just enough. Just enough nicotine into my brain. So anyway, it's just annoying that everybody else smokes completely different than I do. So the damn device is made for other people who are vaping cherry juice. It's not made for people vaping nicotine. Strong nicotine, anyway. Yeah, but it works really. I'm just saying, I don't use much juice, obviously, and it works. I like it. Strong is good. A strong, light hit, not a hot hit. A really light, good nicotine. No, you're not pulling so much air in that you're pulling all the juice out of the damn thing. The draw is tight. It's not a big, huge pile of air. You have to pull on it a little bit. It's just right. Yeah, it's smooth. It's like a real cigarette. See, just smooth. Anyway, enough nicotine thought. I really like it though. I mean, I like the fact that I don't have to fuck with the wires and all that shit, and that's really good. But so it's nice. I have to say, it's improving my life. I'm wasting less time. It's more efficient and all that shit. As long as I don't get the error codes. But when you're getting error codes and you're having a nicotine attack, and you're like, "Fuck you! I want my fucking nicotine, you fucking cunt." The damn thing won't fire up. It's really annoying. But I've seen that with a lot of people's appliances. I mean, I used to fix stuff for people. They have like washing machines that do this shit. It just flashes an error. 685. Error 685. It's like, no, you just wash the clothes, you fucking cunt. I mean, there's no good reason for it. It's like the idiot lights on cars, except, these idiot lights disable the car. And you're like, fuck you. Well, my tires have air in them. You can't disable the car. You cunt. You're wrong. Your code is bullshit. Shut up. Why don't you just have an override button? It just hit the override button and says, fuck you to error codes. Anyway, just a commentary on, I just think devices are made a little bit too smart. And so they're dumb. Just like smart people are dumb. They know lots of mathematics, but they don't have any fucking common sense. So anyway, you people are being a little boring, so I guess I might get out of here. So I think I've done all I want to do. I don't believe nicotine as addictive as many people say. Well, you say whatever the fuck you want, asshole. I've been addicted to it for fucking 48 years or something. So I'm telling you, it's pretty addictive. I've known lots of things. I've tried lots of things, and nothing else made it such an impact as nicotine. And they have plenty of rat studies. I'm just saying, plenty of rat studies demonstrate pretty decisively. They even have a study where they actually have rats that are addicted to both heroin, morphine, and opiates, and nicotine. And when they deprive them of both, the lever they go to first when they're allowed to get their fix is the nicotine. Okay, they don't go to the heroin first; they go to the nicotine first. I think it's other substances in the big cig that combine. What do you think? I think it's just nonsense. Clearly, smoking this device is just like smoking a cigarette in the sense that I just had a pack of real cigarettes and I don't feel any difference than when I was a smoker. So it's not like I'm shocked, like, oh, this is horrible. It tastes horrible. It doesn't seem, it's exactly the same. But if I actually quit smoking altogether and nicotining, and then I picked up a real cigarette, it might make me sick. It might make me dizzy. It might make me a lot of things. So clearly it's the nicotine in the cigarettes that's the game. It has nothing to do with anything else. I mean, I've been vaping for 6 years or more. And, so I've had very limited number of cigarettes in that time. And again, I can pick up a cigarette and smoke 5 in a row like I was still smoking 2 packs a day. Yeah, well, your personal experience ain't mine. So I don't know what kind of nicotine you're vaping and at what levels or any of this other crap. So, it just doesn't mean anything. I mean, clearly there's, obviously something has to do with individual brain function, but I'm just saying they've done the studies on rats. There weren't rats that are like nicotine immune or something. So, you can make this argument that, okay, it doesn't annoy your brain. I mean, clearly alcoholism has something to do with people's biology. Some people can get over it, some people can't. I mean, I found quitting drinking was really easy. I never had I have to get a drink problem. But that doesn't mean people aren't alcoholics and have a real problem. I'm just saying from my personal experience, I enjoyed my first cigarette and I've enjoyed every cigarette I ever smoked. I'm just saying nicotine was a very agreeable substance to my brain. My brain loves nicotine. Yeah, I don't think caffeine is all that. The worst you get when you, it's a headache. But I mean, I've never been like, oh, I gotta have some caffeine or I'll go crazy. I'll just say, oh, I'm tired, and I'd like some caffeine, but it's not nearly the same as cigarette nicotine. I mean, it's just not the same at all. I haven't gone more than like 4 hours without, a nicotine fix in 45 years. I mean, it's just forget it. I mean, I go insane. You deprive me for more than like 4 hours, and I start going. I mean, I get buggy as fuck. Hey Gary, are there any clues to what force bits are made from? I don't know. Their function is so simple that I would argue it doesn't matter. They do one thing. They hit something, and the something they're hitting essentially allows them to exchange momentum with something the same as them in a sense. But we won't get into that complication. I mean, you could argue the matter bits are just made out of frozen force bits. So they're essentially hitting themselves. And the matter allows that to happen by freezing the force bits, sort of trapping them. So you could argue that matter has force bouncing back and forth, and a force bit comes in and it hits another force bit and it does a reflection. And that's essentially momentum for the matter, and it's, the equal but opposite reaction for the force. So conservation is maintained, and so it's really just a force bit hitting a force bit technically. And so you could argue it doesn't matter what they're made out of, because all they do is this one goes this way and this one goes that way. And if the universe did that one thing and nothing else, the universe would be nothing, because that looks the same as them missing each other. But the key difference is sometimes the force bits are able to do, black bit goes this way, red bit goes this way, and the black bit ends up going this way, and the red bit ends up going this way. And that's a different universe. All right, so anyway, any clues to what force bits are made from or why they do what they do, i.e. pass through matter? Well, I would argue they don't really pass through it. They exchange identity, and sometimes the exchange is the same thing happen. Black goes in, black goes this way, black goes this way, black goes this way. It doesn't really matter, except this black's trapped inside of matter, so it matters. But yeah, it's just the fact that you have two types, and the two types end up interacting inside of matter, and that's what creates the whole thing of having change. But nothing's really passing through, quote unquote. It's just doing balanced exchanges. Just as much stuff is hitting it from this side as is hitting it from this side, as hitting it from this side, as hitting it from this side. So it doesn't really go through, it interacts, but the interactions are all, it's like if every single one just took a left turn, you get the idea that every single one takes a left turn, and you end up with exactly the same stuff coming out that went in. So every single thing can interact and take a left turn, but the net result will be over 360 degrees of everything doing exactly the same thing. The net result will be exactly the same. Nothing will move. Nothing changes. And so you think nothing happened, but obviously a lot of shit happened. With the trap force bouncing around in matter, explain why everything has a vibration or resonance. The external field pressure explains it better, in the sense that everything is being hit by random force. And so at any one moment, you could have a little more energy going down than you have up, and a little more going left than you have right. But overall, all the heads will equal all the tails, and it'll come out even. So your Brownian motion is just the randomness of the field pressure. And so that creates part of your Brownian motion is just being created by the randomness of the field. And then the other parts of motion end up being all the collected motion inside of an atom. So every jiggle it's ever had, every electron, every piece of photon, every bit of energy that's ever jiggled something, it's really hard to get rid of a jiggle once you have it. So that's why a lot of this stuff is Brownian motion, is because it got bumped into 10 million years ago, and that bump is still trapped inside of the matter. It hasn't turned into energy yet. It hasn't turned into free energy. It hasn't been released as infrared energy. So it's still inside the atom. And so the atom is energetic because there's nothing sucking the energy out of it. I've heard it argued that sugar is more addictive than nicotine. Well, I'm just saying, not in rat studies. So, they study the rats. You might as well take some of that shit seriously. I mean, do you think to yourself that sugar is addictive, in any kind of sense, where you get withdrawal symptoms and, your brain stops working because you don't have your sugar fix. I mean, it's really not quite the same. I mean, that's more of a glucose intolerance thing or something. It's a eating disorder. It's not really, it doesn't really, I don't think it even fits in the physical addictive category. It's addictive by habit, not by its mere chemistry, where nicotine is addictive by its mere chemistry. It does addiction perfectly. It's very talented at it, where sugar is incidentally addictive. It doesn't do it professionally. Nicotine does addiction professionally. Sugar is a rank amateur. I'm just saying, okay, fine. You're saying that rats prefer sugar over cocaine. I never argued that cocaine was addictive. So I've used cocaine. Cocaine is nothing like nicotine. So again, cocaine is addictive by habit. It's fun. So people like to do things that are fun. Snacking is fun. So you could say salt is addictive or something. It really isn't. It's just enjoyable. So people like to do things that are enjoyable. That's different than addiction. I don't think you'll find any studies that find opiates. Your rats prefer sugar over opium. I don't think you'll find that study. And like I said, I'm sure you won't find that they prefer it over nicotine when they're addicted to nicotine. It's a subject I like, so I'm tolerating it, but it really isn't relevant. My one gigantic stupid vice. Well, I'm so addicted to masturbating and a few other things, but I mean, the vice that is really stupid. Yeah. Okay. That has there's no other mechanism, merely the addiction. Without the addiction, there's no vice. Yeah, we need a physics type point or question or query or interjection or I showed my only physicist friend your videos and he said it sounded like BS, so I gave up. Yeah, well, that doesn't sound like much of an argument coming from a physicist. So, I mean, you can say, oh, it sounds like bullshit. I mean, there are some specific arguments. So I guess the video to show the physicist is the question videos and see if he can answer the questions. Why are photons not the same as electrons in the two slit experiment? Why do they create a different pattern if it's the same process? I could ask the 4 million other questions. Why don't you have him explain to you how pull, okay, is the fundamental force? Like if there's a first force, pull comes first, then push comes second somehow. Why don't you have him explain to you how everything is pulling, and why pull is completely logical. I mean, push couldn't be any simpler to describe. So why don't you have him describe to you a pull? Push you can do. I just throw a rock at something, I pushed it. There, done. Push. Asteroid hits the earth, push. Where's the pull? What's a pull? How do you make a pull? What's the mechanical model for a pull? Dimple, who now lives in a temple. Well, that it doesn't even rhyme. It's like bad poetry. Ugh. You're more like a dimple in a pimple. Pimple stuck in a dimple. The other advantage of running these things, it goes to 200 watts, but 200 watts means you got to pump it with, let's see, 50 volts. I don't know, something like that. You're just burning the coils up. The coils last so much longer if you can keep the voltage low. The higher the voltage, the faster the coil degrades. Cursory Google search shows headlines along the lines of sugar being more addictive than heroin in rats. I just don't think that's. I don't think it's true. I think it's on its face sounds quite silly, so I don't buy it. Maybe they just like a little bit of sugar before they get their heroin. You know, it's like the beer chaser or something. I don't know how to. There's no way. Just there's no way. It doesn't make any logical sense. I think if you've got the rats really depraved. I mean, if they're really feeling the withdrawal symptoms, I don't think there's any way they're heading for the fucking sugar lever. I just don't buy it. Yeah, well, I said you wouldn't find it. I'm saying you're not going to find any real science. So go ahead and show me, get a real link and say this. Look, I looked at a real link. This looks like a real good survey they did. I'm just not buying there's a good. I'm thinking that's made by some kind of industry, somebody with an agenda. Rats love their friends more than sugar, but less than heroin. Well, see, that doesn't even make any sense, right? Because the other guy says the sugar is more than the heroin already. So the sugar would have to be ahead of their friends then. Their friends couldn't be higher than sugar and less than heroin. How long does it take? Well, I don't know. 5 cigarettes, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I got addicted quite quickly. I mean, I had a cigarette one day, and I said, "Well, that was pretty repulsive, but it was fun." It was a little bit fun to get dizzy and fucked up. So I said, "Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, let's try it again." And then I found you could buy cheap cigars, Tiparillos, dirt cheap. And so I started smoking, inhaling cigars. I didn't know that was a rule against that. So that's how I got addicted. So once I started doing the cigars, that just became a huge habit. And then I went back to cigarettes when I found out you're not supposed to inhale cigars. And that's it. That's my story. But yeah, it's hard to say how many it took. But I did enjoy cigarettes. I have to admit, I enjoyed them. Yeah, well, I'd already been smoking pot, which was sort of ironic. I mean, I was 11 years old, but I had smoked some pot, so I was a little bit used to smoking. Um, so I don't think I coughed much on this first cigarette because I was already kind of used to it from choking on marijuana first, cheap Mexican marijuana. Yeah, cigars are raunchy, but you know, nicotine. So to say fuck it. That's the other reason I switched from smoking cigars was I realized I stunk. I smelled like cigars. I said, "Oh no, this ain't gonna get me laid." It didn't matter anyway because I didn't get laid anyway. But I just thought it probably wasn't too good for my prospects to smell like an old man. But they look pretty cool when you're smoking them. It's kind of like that Clint Eastwood thing. Having a little thin cigar, smoking thin cigars does look a little cool. But it is an interesting chemical, I gotta say. I mean, just I still get the rush. It's like not getting stoned, but you just get this nicotine. Just gives you this little like concentration buzz. Just I can focus. It really, it's a little bit of a focusing drug. Yeah, well, I know how hard it is to grow tobacco, so I avoid it just because it's like, nah, it ain't gonna work. It's an incredibly buggy plant. There's a pests eat the hell out of it. It's lots of problems growing tobacco. Yeah, well, I could go weeks without smoking pot. I mean, I never felt any sense of addiction at all to pot. I mean, just you know, you have it, okay. You don't have it, okay. Whatever. Just didn't change my functionality any. I mean, I wasn't at all distracted by the any. Oh, I haven't had pot in 4 days. I haven't had pot in 4 days. I didn't walk around going insane looking for little roaches to smoke or something. Whereas cigarettes, I'll pull them out of somebody else's garbage. I mean, there's times where I've pulled butts out of other people's garbage. you know, I mean, nicotine's just so much different. Yeah, well, the best thing for pot for me, it wasn't just that I felt stupid. It made me stupid because it did. Um, and then after hungry, but I mean, it is such a sensual drug. I have to say. I mean, it was a great. It just made you so sexual in a sense. You're just so like, ooh, I have to find somebody to touch me. I mean, I love I love what it does to me tactically. It just just blow on me even just blow air on me just do something because I love that about pot. It just makes me incredibly makes all the nerves right on the edge. Just ooh, I'm all tingly. But anyway, enough. People always conversations always turn to drugs, 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 drugs. It's not that it's not an interesting subject. It just hasn't everybody said everything there ever needs to be said in the history of mankind hasn't already been said. The old fan, yeah, I got to make you a video. It doesn't matter because I do owe you money anyway. But DreamHost is charging my credit card for the hosting account, so I just thought I'd let you know. So I paid for the last 2 months, but it's not a big deal. But eventually, you might want to change that maybe, unless you did it on purpose. Yeah, let's just screw Gary over. Let him pay for it. Somehow they have my credit card as the main credit card account, and I can't switch. There's no choices, so it's mine or nothing. So I don't know. It's weird, but I don't mind. Like I said, I could pay for it if I had to. Maybe I could always sell this, for $500 or something. You think you're on to something with physics? Yeah, that's right. But I don't think you'll succeed in bringing down the Goliath. Well, I don't care what you think. You're whatever, some cool person in your sunglasses. It's an automatic. I'm not going to pay much attention to that guy. He's one of those sunglasses people. So, yeah, you're entitled to your opinion, but it doesn't. The truth is going to look. In my opinion, the truth always wins. In the end, eventually, it will win. So the truth is going to win. I don't have to be the guy carrying it, but I'm just saying eventually it's going to win, and they'll look it up and say, yeah, Gary had it all the way back then. So I'm not too worried about it one way or the other. I mean, I know I'm very confident that this is the right answer for all the reasons I pointed out. The fact that the speed of light is really the speed of force, that this is all about just the forces all being unified. It's the same fucking force. That makes sense. Push versus pull. This makes sense. I mean, it just fits in so many ways. I know I'm right. I think you're onto something, Goliath. You're so pessimistic about human nature and that you give humans way too much. I don't. I'm just saying that they've been incredibly slow to pick up on obvious things, but they did pick up on them. They did ban bullfighting. I mean, maybe they'll bring it back before they ban it again, but I'm just saying they have gotten the right answers. They have gotten to some truths here. They have started to get a little cynical. It's not like they haven't figured out some of this stuff is bullshit. They're most of the intellectuals on planet Earth, that is, most of the people with an IQ over 100, don't believe in God. I mean, so, it's not that bad. Yeah, well, normal isn't a good thing, right? So you're making my point for me. In an idiocracy, it's not good to be normal. So sunglasses, in my opinion, is lame. That's just saying, I'm weak. I can't deal with the sun. Sun's scary. Pussy. But your criticism of my parents is pretty weak. I'm just saying that as a persona image, you have it as your icon. I'm just saying, as an icon, I, from my life experience, okay, sunglasses are a way that people hide, and so it's like used car salesmen or something. I mean, they're hiding because their eyeballs are winking as they're saying stuff, and yeah, they're it's just a way of being fake. So I associate it with fakeness. So I'm just saying, if it's just from my life experience, that's been a semi-reliable um, intuition, if you want to call it that. Now, maybe it's a bigotry, maybe it's a little bit unfair, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, if somebody's wearing nylon suits and he's got a gold tooth and sunglasses, yeah, he's probably not going to be a good friend. I'm just saying humans pursue profit, not truth. Well, I know, but that's not true. Some humans are assholes, some humans aren't. generally speaking, the intelligent are capable of being smaller assholes. Now, the fact that currently they haven't been doing that, that's just the current problem. I would argue that 200 years ago, the intellectuals were pretty intelligent. Now, the intellectuals of today have kind of backslid into being buffoons and schemers, but that doesn't mean that the future is doomed. It just means that we're in the shit period. Yes, I'm not saying you don't have a good reason to wear them. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying you picked the icon. I'm just saying you could find a picture of yourself maybe where you're not being too cool. Okay, that I might be a better icon. That's just from my impression. Maybe it's good for chicks, the sunglasses and the flat head. That's chicks like that. Um, but I'm just saying my impression is, oh, poser, poser, troll, fuckhead, shit talker. That's all I'm saying. It's my impression. I'm entitled to have impressions, and that's my impression. It's kind of a glib icon, I guess is what I'm saying, right? And I have an aversion to the glib. So your icon sort of says glib. It says superficial. It doesn't really say Beavis and Butthead, but it's almost heading for Beavis and Butthead. It might be, what was that stupid dude movie? When I hate. The two assholes who time travel in the phone booth or whatever the fuck it was. How was that stupid movie? Anyway, I watched your video. Let's see. I watched your video on gravitational wave, which was supposed to have been moved the Earth slightly. Well, whatever it's supposed to have done, but yeah, right. Okay. If the wave affected the Earth, would it not have cleared a huge spectral shape of space around its origin? Exactly. So, this is the magic of their theory. They're saying the force created is not regular energy. So, it doesn't move matter somehow when it moves the bent space. And that just doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, yeah, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. There you go. So the bent space, and that just on its face, it just doesn't make any sense because, well, how can it move? If it moves matter on Earth, how can it not move matter when it was created? And so that just doesn't make any sense. So obviously, yes, by the inverse square law, the force should have evacuated a huge amount of space around it when this event happened. And they just don't have a continuous theory to explain one and the other. And they just kind of just say it's bent space. It's not really a force. And that doesn't really say anything, right? But you're saying, so what they're really saying is that it's not a force that makes something move. It's a force that makes something do this. It makes things vibrate, but it doesn't make things move. So it's not a push or a pull. It's an expansion and a contraction. And somehow it's complete, so nothing gets moved. It just expands and contracts. It's some kind of crap like that. But yeah, it sounds like crap, right? I mean, that sounds like crap. First converting matter into a geometry, a non-energetic force, right? Einstein turned gravity into a non-energy force. And now they're converting it back into an energy force, but saying, no, it's like dark energy. It really isn't energy. It's just expansion and contraction. I mean, it's just really fucking convoluted. So we have Bill and Ted. Yes, wonderful. Dumb and Dumber, the first Dumb and Dumber movie. The other thing that works good is just dripping nicotine in instead of filling the tank. I just drip it in, and it's so much more controllable. Yeah, well, it's just a bigotry of mine with sunglasses. I was never able to wear sunglasses for any period of time without saying, I hate this shit on my head. And I lost every pair of sunglasses. When I was a kid, they'd buy the cheap ones at the gas station, for a buck or whatever. And so we all have sunglasses. And I'd lose mine in 3 hours. It's like jewelry. I never was able to wear a ring because I'd always leave it somewhere. It's a watch on your arm. I could never wear a watch. I'm really bad at that kind of shit. So I've never worn sunglasses ever, for more than 10 minutes. I made some videos wearing them. I've worn sunglasses longer in videos than I've worn them in real life. True statement. Yeah, it's just, I also don't like things that, especially with your eyesight. I don't like the idea of my eyes adjusting to something and then I change it and now they have to I think that's just fucking your eyes up. I don't think it does your eyesight any good to acclimate to things because then your eyes, it's the old Darwinian thing. They just say, I'm going to be lazy because you said it's okay. So, I mean, my eyesight has gotten fairly shitty, but it still works. I mean, I can still manage, you know. So maybe it'll get worse and I won't be able to manage and I'll have to get glasses of some kind. But I think forcing it to work has worked a little bit. Well, I generally hate Apple products. It's exactly the antithesis of my values. So it's all this fancy shit, this, overdone shit that I just hate. I hate overdone, you know, I don't want a computer that says hello to me and all that, fuck all that shit. So Neo from the Matrix, I guess. I used to be addicted to heroin. I got over that with the help of affirmations. There is no spoon. Funny joke, right? Oh, hilarious. What a witty person. Amazing. It's just, oh. Just feel the creepiness creeping. Just this is what people do with their brain. I have to come up with something witty and funny to say. Neo, let's see, there is no spoon. Yeah, I'll use that. That's a good line. I'll use that wherever I can. No spoon. So cool. Let's see. They recently were in a heat for lying about slowing down older phones. Yeah, well, you can see they obviously have a huge incentive They want everything proprietary. I mean, that's my only introduction to Apple was I used to do some general computer maintenance in the old days. And somebody would have a broken computer and you'd say, okay, yeah, it needs a new floppy drive. And you could buy one for a PC for $12 and Apple wants $58. It's like, what the fuck? $58 for a floppy drive? Fuck you cunts. So yeah, I mean, you can't have much respect for a company that sells you a power cord for $17. Fuck you, cunt. So yeah, I never liked Apple. I didn't like Bill Gates, but I loved IBM. I thought IBM did great. Because IBM was really pretty fair about opening some standards. It was pretty much said, go ahead and fuck us. Steal our innovation. Go ahead, yeah, go ahead. It's okay. And they let other companies make peripherals, and it was compatible, and so they were pretty fair about, open sourcing a lot of stuff. But Microsoft was a cunt, so that was the bad news. Let's see. This is the world you think there's a chance of saving. Well, I don't really think there's a chance of saving the entire world or something. I think there's a chance that intelligence will persevere and it will win, just like penicillin won and other things win. It'll win in the end, if there ever is an end. If the end doesn't come with a bullet to the head. Throw money at Apple and suck whatever that is. I can't even read it. Car. Sound it out, Gary. Car orienter Weiner. Wiener. Whatever. Throw money at Apple. Yeah, don't do any of that. Intelligence won't win until the singularity. Well, there ain't gonna be any one of those either. There'll be a boomerang. There'll be a boomerality, bangerality, and that'll be it. All our little monuments will be turned to dust, and there'll be no sign of our existence. Anyway, this is not good enough physics conversation, so I'm gonna have to tighten up the rules here. Let's see how many people are here. It's worth just saying fuck you. Not anything personal. Just generally a fuck you. You can't see it from that window, Gary. You have to go to the other one. Okay, go here. 26, man, you're so fucking lame. 26 people, and you people can't type more shit. Really, pretty bad. I've had 9 people do better than you people are doing. Let's see. Intelligent people use their intelligence to justify their emotional craziness. It's not the point. The point is that the migration of ideas, memes evolve. Memes are like viruses, and they take control of civilizations. So the point is the memes, I'm saying, will inevitably filter up. The truth can't be buried in any substantial way for very long. It will persevere. So if we last another 10,000 years, I would argue that the memes of conversation will certainly have a lot more of a flavor of taking responsibility for the futility of our psychological condition and the fact that we are just psychologies that are programmed by a bunch of silly circumstances. Yeah. I like sunglasses. I hate sunglasses. Just nonsense like that. And that's all we are is mushy, silly, knee jerky psychologies, in need of feeding, and that it is a futile practice to think you're accomplishing something by creating these broken machines that just go through the world trying to find parts to fit on. It's like the AI movie, right? The AI movie has lots of interesting scenes in it. But the scenes where the defective robots are going to the junkyard, to pick up new hands and new heads and new pieces, it's just all what we're doing. We're just feeding on the crap just to try to make ourselves whole, some sense of wholeness or rightness, functionality. And, and there's no hope of ever being a useful machine. We're it's just all cosmetics. I just want to look like a good robot. I don't want to be a good robot. I don't underestimate. I'm sorry, you're saying I underestimate how much intelligence is enslaved by psychology. I certainly don't underestimate it. I'm just saying I don't think you have any facts to demonstrate how the world gets dumber. It really doesn't. It gains knowledge and it puts it in the book. Now, 100 years ago, they made a stupid right turn, wrong turn, left turn when it came to physics and started doing this pull thing instead of the push thing. And they just got it all backwards and upside down. But they're going to correct for that, just like they correct for the other mistakes they've made in history. And so I'm just saying this conversation will evolve, and the evolution is going to be that it's going to contain more elements of truth as it evolves. We're not going to go back to three bear stories. We're not going to go back to, once you know 2 + 2 = 4, you can't go back to getting wrong answers. Never mind, Gary. Whatever. You're the one you talk this shit and then you say never mind. Anyway. Jeez. Night, he says, night. Well, I suppose night is enough, but I mean, see, that's just another one of these modern things. It's just night. Well, whatever. I guess it is. Yes, I'll confirm. You're correct. It is night, where I am also. But anyway, take care. Blah 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 blah. What would you say to thinking out the box? What would you say is thinking outside the box? It's a kind of, you always have to be suspect of what the history has taught us is that this learning curve is difficult, and that the masses, the gangs, make something more than it should be, like worshiping the king or something, or religion, for example. And so nonsense gets popular for no good reason. So you have to be a little bit suspect when something's popular, because yes, the knee jerkers, the idiots of the idiocracy vote, and they vote badly. And so you have to be suspect. So thinking outside the box is just being careful. Okay. Thinking outside the box is saying this is probably a trivial answer and the truth might be more complicated. So that's what you're kind of looking for. If it's too simple, then, too simple as a, so I'm trying to get to the point that some things can obviously look like cheats and fudges and generalizations that just kind of abuse the subject. Like the welfare whore with a Cadillac, some kind of cliche that statistically really doesn't have any merit as a real problem. Um, something like that. The fact that statistics can be abused and all that kind of stuff. So thinking outside the box should be just thinking, um, thinking carefully. I mean, actually thinking about it rather than just accepting it. But I mean, almost everything needs to be. Unfortunately, you can't trust anyone, right? I mean, you can trust me, but you can't trust anybody else, because everybody else is going to tell you shit that they didn't really think about, or they didn't really research, or they didn't really, they're just talking out of their ass. You got to be really careful because you're just getting shit. So, yeah. So I don't know what to do with that statement. I mean, it's obviously, I like the idea of thinking outside of these rigid limitations that may be completely arbitrary or erroneous. But obviously, the same argument can be made about the open-minded stuff. Too open a mind and your brain falls out. So too cynical and you're useless too. Also, so yeah, I guess mainly I'm saying it has something to do with you have to be careful of. You have to be a little bit suspicious of popularity. If something's popular, you probably can assume it's junk food because junk food is popular. That kind of argument. So anyway, I need more. Come on, physics. Come on, come on. Go, 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 go. You don't have any physics. I have to go because I don't want to start another subject. If you don't have any, it's just sort of surprising that none of you have any queries at all. Just nothing. You could just ask a question of some kind. Well, they'll probably ask me something stupid. It's like, how much hydrogen would it take to lift Ken Wheeler 1 foot off the ground? Some kind of dumbass question. All right. But anyway, so I guess I'll go. And you have other things I should be attending to, but I really don't want to do anything. So this is just a cop out. I'm just pretending I'm doing something by not doing anything. Psychology. Unfortunately, you have to keep fighting with your own bad habits and, yeah, I just have a little, I guess I'm just a little fucking fatigued by it all. So I'm trying to escape fatigue by just hitting these, anything you people can throw at me, it'll be like a softball. So it's kind of fun because, you can't dent me. Can't get to me. And so it's kind of fun just hitting fluffy marshmallow softballs. So yeah, I'm copping out. So I should be doing serious work. How does your theory deal with black holes? It really just doesn't. I think it's possible to compress matter, but it has huge limitations. So the idea of compressing all the mass of the Earth into the size of a grapefruit sounds to me like you have to create pressures that would be impossible. Electrons have to be too close to electrons, all that kind of shit. So the idea that you can compress protons, well, that sounds a little bit more plausible. And that you could make them sort of compact. Well, you might be able to get away with that. But you can never do this Earth in a grapefruit thing. This idea of little tiny black holes and all that, that just seems like total crap. And if there's a big black hole out there, like 20,000 solar masses, I'm betting it's a big thing, not a little thing. Okay, I'm sure it's really big, not really small. I mean, the crap that starts galaxies going, I bet you that crap is compressed, but it's a big thing, It starts off as a big hunk of shit, and then it breaks into a binary, and then the binary breaks into smaller pieces. So I think galaxies are entropy, they're the things falling apart. And so obviously there was a lot of stuff in that galaxy to start with, all those suns, but I don't think they were in a little tiny grapefruit. I mean, the repulsion between electrons is just a very powerful force. So I don't even know how to, it's like a million times more powerful than magnets or something, I mean, it's just a very powerful force. I just don't think they can overcome that problem of smashing electrons together because they really don't like it. All right, so you're running out of questions, then I have to go. Yeah, I'll go. 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's late. Should go. So I'm gonna go. All right. So till the next time. Thank you very much. Blah blah blah. Oh, here we go. Have they ever been able to prove the existence of black holes? Well, no. I mean, they've only circumstantially. So I mean, they did find a little bit of evidence in the center of the galaxy. There's this shit moving around, some other shit that's all invisible shit. But again, those black holes could be huge. They don't have to be tiny. So the idea of the idea that the black holes have a huge density in a very tiny location. I'm saying you can have a lot of mass that isn't on fire. So you could have like a giant Earth that's got a lot of heavy elements in it, just not on fire. I mean, they look like poorly made CGI cartoons. Well, yeah, I mean, they have too many simulations of reality and not enough pictures of reality. So, yeah, there's a lot of missing pieces to the theory. And again, it's a mathematical thing. So their model doesn't have limitations. I mean, I would argue that the force of gravity has a limitation. It can only create so much pressure. And that's all the pressure there is because it's an external force and there's only so much of it. So you can only create, you get to a certain point and you've already used up all the gravity potential, so to speak. So you can't really make any more gravity because you've reached the limitation of the gravity force. And you can't compress anything any more than that. So there's a certain amount of pressure you can create, and that's it. You can't go any higher. So I just don't think black hole theory makes any sense because I don't think you have an infinite amount of pressure to play with. And such. There's only so much light. So you can only create so much darkness, and that's all the darkness you can create. Once you've blocked all the light, you can't make things any darker. So if that would be an appropriate analogy, but their math says, because they have a mathematical model, their mathematical model says, because this is a pull force or whatever, that they can have an unlimited amount of darkness. They can make the well as deep as they want. And so I'm just saying that's the problem. Their model doesn't create any limitation. It can go down infinity. So it's like making an infinitely dark shadow. And I would argue you can't make an infinitely dark shadow. Doesn't make any sense. So that's the fundamental reason why I'm suspicious of the existence of black holes, is because I don't think you can make infinite pressure or anything close to it. Yeah. All right. So now I'll go. So anyway, happy trails and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. And I'll probably be back tomorrow or something, or today, later, or something, because it's going to rain probably. And that'll give me an excuse to waste some more time talking to you people. No offense. Oh, look at that, more comments. Probably saying goodbye. Good. Let's see. Good night, and once again, thanks. Well, likewise, thank you. And do you think we can navigate our planetary system through space if we somehow interfere, I guess that is, with the sun's path? Yeah, I, I think you only do it by absorbing the force, and that means you need something huge to absorb the force. So you have to make a thing that can absorb a tremendous amount of force. So I think you're going to be out of luck. I mean, you can do it if you can like tie a planet to a string, and then you could pull the string and move the planet around. You know, yeah, it's just I don't think it's too practical. I just don't think you're practically going to get out of this one. I don't see any gravity guns in our future. I'll do a line for you. Well, I don't know if that's necessary, but whatever. You know, it's like saying I'll have a wank for me. Okay, well, go ahead, but you know, it's a little bit, whatever. You know, different strokes and such. So go ahead. Seems, you know, I don't know if I'd be doing. I don't know if I'd be doing. I mean, unless you plan on being up for the next 6 hours, I don't see the point. But that's just me. Maybe you live somewhere where it's time to wake up. Anyway, okay, till next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. And if I offended anybody, tough. No, so I apologize to anybody who needs to be apologized to. There, that's a generic enough coverage, right? If you are entitled to an apology, I apologize. And if you're not entitled to one, fuck you. There, that's simple. That covers it all. I don't have to take any personal responsibility. This is pretty cool effect, right? I mean, because they're delayed in time, they're all different colors from the blinking light. That's pretty cool. So each one of these images is really showing what a time delay there is, because each one is picking up the color changes. Maybe I can use that somehow. That's pretty neat effect, actually. Pretty cool. Shows how slow my computer is. You know, it actually takes so much time to render these different images that they all have different colors. Oh, pretty funny. Anyway, it's pretty cool. As you know, generic cool things go, it's pretty cool. But anyway, till next time and such. Thanks. Goodbye and such.